Jason's moving in next month, and if that's a problem for you, then maybe this isn't the place for you anymore." She didn't pause after saying it. No hesitation, no checking my reaction. She kept scrolling on her phone like she just announced a grocery run, not rewritten our living situation without me. We were standing in the kitchen of the apartment we'd shared for nearly 3 years. Both our names were on the lease. Rent split evenly. Utilities shared. Furniture bought together. This wasn't a crash pad or a temporary setup. It was our home, built slowly and practically, piece by piece. Jason was her co-worker, mid-30s, chronic excuses. I'd met him twice, once at a bar after her office happy hour, where he drank too much and complained loudly about his boss. The second time when she let him crash on our couch after missing the last train. I hadn't loved either interaction, but I'd stayed polite. She said he was between places, that his roommate situation had fallen apart, that he just needed something short-term. I asked how long short-term was. She shrugged, said we'd see how it goes. I told her no, not angrily, not emotionally, just clearly. I said I didn't agree to live with another adult, that I worked from home full-time, that I needed the spare room as my office, that I didn't want to subsidize someone else's instability. She sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. She said I was making a big deal out of nothing, that Jason would barely be around, that it would only be for a bit, that we were supposed to be a team. I asked why she hadn't talked to me first. She said she knew I'd say no, that she didn't want to argue, that this was easier. That's when I realized she hadn't brought this up to discuss it. She'd brought it up to inform me. I pointed out that the lease didn't allow additional occupants without approval. She waved her hand and said the landlord never checked, that everyone did it, that I needed to relax. I asked where Jason would sleep. She said the spare room. I reminded her that it wasn't spare, that it was my office, that it was the reason I could pay my half of the rent. She said I could work from the bedroom for a while. I asked if Jason would be paying rent. She said he'd help out when he could, that things were tight for him, that it wasn't about money, but money was already part of it. She mentioned that splitting utilities 3 ways would lower costs, that groceries could be shared, that it would actually help us in the long run. I told her this crossed a boundary. She laughed and said I was being dramatic, that it wasn't like she cheated, that I was acting threatened over nothing. Then she said it. If you don't like it, you're free to leave, but you're still responsible for your half of the rent. There it was. Stay and accept it, or leave and pay anyway. I asked if she hurt herself. She said she was being realistic, that commitments didn't disappear just because feelings were hurt, that she couldn't afford the place alone. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Jason's name lit up the screen. She smiled when she read it, didn't hide it, didn't feel the need to. She told me he'd already given notice at his current place, that he was counting on this, that backing out now would make her look bad. I asked when he planned to move in. 2 weeks. Everything had already been decided. I went into the bedroom and closed the door, not to escape the conversation, but to slow my breathing. I looked around at the space I paid for, maintained and treated like mine. I realized how many times over the past year she'd made unilateral decisions and framed my discomfort as a flaw. She went to bed that night without another word, slept fine. I lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling, understanding something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a pattern. I brought it up again the next evening, because ignoring it didn't make it disappear. She came home from work already irritated, dropped her bag by the door, and asked if I was still stuck on that thing. I said yes, that it wasn't a thing, that it was our living situation. She didn't sit down. She stayed standing, arms crossed, like she was bracing for a speech she didn't respect. She said she wasn't changing her mind. Jason needed help. This was happening. If I loved her, I'd figure it out. I asked her why love only seemed to work in one direction lately. She said I was twisting her words, that couples made sacrifices, that she would do the same for me. I asked when she ever had. She said this wasn't the time to keep score. Then she reminded me again that rent was due soon and she couldn't afford it alone. The implication wasn't subtle. It didn't need to be. That was the moment everything lined up. Jason wasn't moving in because he needed help. He was moving in because I was reliable, because my income made bad decisions survivable, because as long as I stayed, There was a floor under all of it. I told her calmly that I wouldn't pay rent on a place where I no longer had equal say or equal access. Her face changed instantly. Shock first, then anger. She said that wasn't how leases worked, that my name was on the contract, that I couldn't just opt out because I was uncomfortable. She said I was being irresponsible and selfish. I told her I'd already spoken to the landlord. The room went quiet. I explained that I hadn't complained. I hadn't accused anyone. I'd asked a simple question about occupancy rules and lease exits. The answer had been very clear. No additional occupants without written approval. Any violation triggered a review. And if one tenant gave notice, the remaining tenant had to requalify or restructure. I told her I'd given formal notice that morning. 30 days. In writing. She stared at me like I'd betrayed her. She said I did this behind her back. I said she'd already done the same. She accused me of trying to corner her, of using the lease as a weapon, of choosing paperwork over people. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I just told her I was moving out. She asked where I thought I was going to go. I said I'd figure it out. She said I was blowing up our relationship over a temporary situation, that I was inflexible, that Jason would have been gone in a few months anyway. I asked why she hadn't put that in writing, why she hadn't set a timeline, why she hadn't even asked me. She didn't answer. She just said I was abandoning her when she needed support. I packed that night, not dramatically, no throwing things, just boxes, clothes, work equipment, documents, things that were clearly mine. I left the couch, the bed, the TV. I didn't want to negotiate ownership. I wanted distance. She followed me from room to room asking what she was supposed to do now. She said Jason couldn't pass a credit check, that he had a prior eviction, that this wasn't fair, that I was forcing her into an impossible situation. I told her she'd created it herself. She cried then, not loudly, not hysterically, just enough to make the apartment feel heavy. I didn't comfort her. I didn't argue. I kept packing. I slept on a friend's couch that night. By morning, I'd changed my mailing address, separated our finances, and scheduled utility cancellations for the end of the month. Anything in my name was no longer going to float decisions I didn't agree to. She texted constantly, long messages, short messages, anger followed by panic, followed by guilt. I didn't block her. I just didn't engage. 3 days later, an email arrived from the landlord. Both of us were copied. He needed to inspect the unit. No accusations, no threats, just procedure. Jason hadn't even moved in yet, and already the situation was starting to collapse under its own rules. Final update. The inspection happened on a weekday morning while I was already at work in my friend's spare room. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. My part was already finished. The landlord noticed the mattress first, leaning against the wall in what used to be my office. Then the boxes, men's clothes folded inside, shoes lined up near the door. Not technically a violation yet, but enough to make the situation obvious. He asked who the additional belongings belonged to. She said Jason was planning to stay temporarily, that he hadn't officially moved in yet, that it was just until he got back on his feet. The landlord explained calmly that temporary didn't matter. Any adult staying more than a few nights required approval. Application, background check, credit check, no exceptions, or the lease would be terminated. Jason applied that same afternoon. He failed within 2 days. Bad credit, prior eviction, inconsistent employment, no drama, just facts on a screen that didn't care about intentions or good stories. The landlord followed policy. He gave her 2 options. Remove the unapproved occupant immediately and requalify for the unit on her income alone, or vacate at the end of the notice period. She couldn't qualify alone. She called me first. I didn't answer. She texted saying the application didn't go through, that this wasn't how she expected things to happen, that the landlord was being unreasonable. I didn't respond. Then the tone changed. She asked if I'd reconsider coming back, just temporarily, just to help stabilize things. She said we could reset and talk things through later. She promised Jason would leave once things settled. I didn't reply. Jason moved out before the notice even expired. Not because I asked him to, not because I confronted anyone. He left because without my income and my name on the lease, the situation had no foundation. There was nowhere to stand. She tried to negotiate with the landlord again, asked for an extension, asked about subletting, asked if I could co-sign something new. The answer stayed no. She had to break the lease. She lost the security deposit, paid an early termination penalty, moved out under stress instead of on her terms. All the flexibility she'd assumed existed disappeared once the reliable piece was gone. She found a smaller place across town with a roommate she met online. Different lease, different rules, less space, less control. I moved into a quiet one-bedroom a week later, signed my own lease, set up my desk exactly where I wanted it, locked the door behind me and felt the apartment stay quiet. There was no dramatic breakup conversation, no final argument, just logistics resolving themselves without me involved. About a month later, she sent one last message. She said she never thought I'd actually leave, that she assumed I'd adapt like I always did, that she didn't realize how serious I was until everything started falling apart. She was right about one thing. I used to adapt. I used to absorb decisions I didn't agree with because it kept things running, because it was easier than conflict, because I was dependable. This time I didn't yell, threaten, or fight. I didn't demand apologies or explanations. I stepped out of the arrangement and let it operate without me. It couldn't, and that was the end of it.